Hey, I'm Mark Lowery. Welcome to my Tales from the Shed. Today I'm going to give you another 5-minute writing tips lesson, and today we're going to be talking about characters. Now, they're at the centre of all of our stories, aren't they? Those are the people who are going to be having our adventures for us, or are going to be suffering problems, or are going to be doing terrible things to each other, or are going to be brave, or are going to be scared. And so it's really important that we get our characters right to make our stories sing. One of the kind of key things is, I always think, with a story, one of the easiest ways to develop a story is once you've got your kind of main character and you've got an idea of who they are and what they're like, you try and think about all of the worst people you could possibly put up against them, and then put them in scenes together and mess around with them and see how they go. So, for example, in my stories, I wrote the Roman Garstang series that was about a boy, and he's kind of accident prone, and he's quite quiet, and he just wants a quiet life and a normal life. And then I tried to think of as many different characters who'd be absolutely appalling for him to be around. So we had Rosie Taylor, who's this horrible, nasty, kind of snobby girl who just detests him for no real reason, and he's got his sort of best friend Darren Gamble, who's this appalling, nasty, weird kid, but has actually got a really soft side underneath, and he's all disgusting and everything and violent, but he also loves Roman for some reason. And then he meets, along the way during the series, he meets a load of other people who are in one way or another the worst people for him. And a lot of what I did to kind of come up with the stories and come up with the situation was just to put the two characters in a situation together and see what happened, or put the three characters together and see what happened in there. So, first things first, when we're creating a character, we need to think about who they are. What are we trying to get out of them? What kind of a person do we want? Now, Roald Dahl, one of my heroes, used to say, when you're creating a character, if you're going to make them evil, make them really evil. If you're going to make them nice, make them super nice. Really accentuate natural human attributes, or characteristics, and really multiply them by 100. Now, the way I do it is I kind of try and think about real people. So if I want to come up with a really sweet, kind person, I'll think of all of the sweet, kind people I've ever known, like people I went to school with, people I've worked with, people I've lived with, people in my family, people on TV, people in films, and I'll try and pick out some of the things that they do. How do they stand? How do they talk to people? How do they look at people? If I want to write about a nasty person, I'll think about all the most horrible people I've ever known, and I'll put them all together, kind of like a human cocktail, and I'll say, well, what did they do? What made them cruel? What were those little things they used to say? And, what were their little characteristics? And you really want to get to know them as well as possible. Steve Coogan, the amazing British comedian, creator of Alan Partridge and everything, when he creates characters, I've heard him in interviews saying, he knows everything about them. He knows how they walk down the street. He knows what newspaper they buy. He knows what they eat for their breakfast and how they eat it. He knows, the kinds of what their political views are. He knows how they would do absolutely anything around the house. He knows exactly how they do it. So you've got to know your characters. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk you through how I developed one of my characters, probably one of my favourite characters I've ever made, how I created him, and what the stages were, and a few ideas. Now, first things first, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. You can do it however you want. You can do it in any order you want. You can do it by brainstorming or mind showering, or whatever you want to call that. Or you can do it by writing scenes and just developing them as you write and editing it and changing it. So I'm going to show you a few of the stages of how I created one of my favourite characters, Darren Gamble. So when I came up with the idea of Darren Gamble, if you've not read the Roman Garstang books, that's fine. The series has this quiet, lovely kid, Roman, who just wants a quiet life, but everything goes wrong. And I wanted somebody to kind of balance him out. Some really, really weird out there kid who's really violent and, in your face and on you all the time, and he's constantly noisy and constantly causing problems. because I thought it'd be really funny to put them together in scenes. You know, this quite reserved character with this completely out there character, and so I decided to create this character of Darren. And I started getting into my head, right, what do those kids look like? I've been a teacher for nearly 20 years. I've, obviously known loads of people in my life through school. What did they look like? And first thing was, I sketched him out. I sketched a picture of him, and I thought about the kinds of things he'd have, like, what was his hair like? What was his head like? I thought it'd be funny, rather than being a big, brutey kind of Crab and Goyle kind of thuggish character. I thought it'd be funny if he was small and skinny with a weird little head. And so immediately I came up with what he'd look like. And from there, I started to think, well, what clothes would he wear? And then I thought this could be a funny ongoing joke on him. He's always wearing a heavy metal t-shirt. He's into thrash metal music, and he's always wearing a heavy metal t-shirt, and this could kind of came back again and again in the books. He'd like bands called Sweaty Sue and the Armpits, or I don't know, Dr. Death and the Infections, and all this kind of stuff. And that would be the kind of one of his things. Okay. Now, of course, if you want to really get to know your characters, you don't just want to know what they look like on the outside. So what you need to do is think about other things, like what do they keep in their pockets? What are the kind of things that they carry around with them? So for Darren, I was thinking, okay, what are the most disgusting kids I've known? Always have like pockets full of weird stuff. Like, what would be the weirdest thing you could have in his? What's the most disgusting thing? How about like an old sandwich? But it wouldn't be a cheese sandwich or a jam sandwich. It'd have to be like a fish paste or something like that. And he'd have to have like something dangerous in there as well, like something mildly explosive, like a firework, maybe like an animal. And then you can play around with it as well, because you can think, well, okay, what kind of an animal would it be? And you can always change it. This is the beauty of writing. You can always change it as you go. Would it be funny if he had a frog because they're slimy and disgusting? Would it be funny if he had a rat because they're really, really gross? And actually, would it be better if the rat was alive or dead? And you start to think about these things, because if it's alive, he can hide it places, or if it's dead, he can hide it places. But then, if it's alive, I got the idea. Well, hang on a second. If he's got like the kind of kid who carries a live rat, maybe he loves it. Maybe then I kept that for later. And sometimes this happens when you're creating a character. You come up with something, you go, that was something I wasn't expecting. What if he loves this rat? I'll keep that for later, and I'll have a think about it later, and we will come back to it. So now you're getting under your character's skin a little bit, some of the things, and you're probably starting to think, well, what's their character like, and what kind of things they like doing, how do they like spending their time? And with Darren, I want him to be big and a big character. So he's the kind of kid who likes fighting, he likes threatening people. But if I was writing a funny story here, so I wanted his threats to be kind of like amusing as well as violent. If it's a violent, really truly violent character, he's going to say some pretty horrible stuff. Darren's threats have got to have that kind of comedy side as well. So it's got to be kind of things like, bite your ankles off, or I'll chew out your eyeballs. Things that you wouldn't he wouldn't do necessarily, but they sound funny. I started to think about, the kinds of things he enjoys doing. Maybe he's the kind of kid who makes explosives. I went to school with a kid who liked blowing stuff up. And, and then I started to think, well, what kind of a relationship would he have around the classroom? And he's got this, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be funny if he had somebody to balance up against him? Because if you're creating a story, and creating characters aren't really much on their own. It's how they interact with other people. And then I got this idea, what if Darren's got a teaching assistant? And I've worked with so many amazing teaching assistants in my life who are just wonderful people. What if Darren's was rubbish, and really hated him and just spent all the time yawning and looking at a phone and looking at magazines, just shopping for bras on the internet? So, just some weird stuff that's like completely odds with what he needs. Because you get that with a lot of people. They only see the surface of somebody, and wouldn't that be funny if this person only ever sees the surface of Darren, and you start to think about what kind of a house does he live in, all that kind of stuff. So we're starting to get to know him a little bit. And if you really want to create, though, a really fantastic character, they can't just be kind of on the surface. They can't just be kind of paper thin. You need a little bit more. They've got to have a bit of depth to them, something a bit more interesting. With Darren, on the surface, he seems to be this gross, horrible, kind of violent, comical figure who's just, looks weird and acts even weirder. But as I was thinking back when I was kind of creating the character, I was starting to think, well, what kind of what's his secret? What's going on under the surface? And then I thought, wouldn't it be funny, and also quite sweet if he had a different side to him? If he had a kind of a loving side to him, and he wouldn't extend it to everybody because he's not that kind of guy. But what if he was the kind of character who, he loves his pet? And I had the idea of the pet rat. Maybe it's a bit kind of cliched. What if he had like a dog? What if he had a dog? But of course, it wouldn't be a nice pedigree dog. It lives in Darren's house, and I'd already had thoughts about Darren's house. Maybe he's got a horse in there that, living in the front room that smokes or eats crisps or something. It's not going to be a pleasant, lovely dog, beautiful pedigree thing. It's going to be gross. It's going to be constantly scratching and licking its own bum, and then of course Darren, being disgusting, would let it lick his face straight afterwards, and it'd eat food off the table. What if it came into Roman's house? Wouldn't that be brilliant? And then it started trying to eat his donuts, and those kind of, if you can create a bit of depth and an extra layer to your characters, and where we can see, how do we make them a little bit more than what we can just see on the surface? You might want to think, what's their weakness? What's the one thing that they're weak about? What's the one thing, or maybe it's what's the one thing people don't know about them, or what's the one thing that they secretly dream of? And a lot of the time as well, it's what does your character want in the story? What does your character want? In my stories, Darren always wants not just to be kind of violent and fight and all that kind of stuff. He also does want a friend, and he also wants people to like him, I think, deep down. It's just he only cares about certain people liking him. Anyway, it's really up to you how you do it. You can use that structure I've just had a go at showing you. Have a bash at it, see how it goes for you. And if you come up with some great characters, jot them down in the comments. That'd be great to see them. And just have fun, because that's what writing's about. It's about enjoying yourself. And if you enjoy it, then the people who are reading your writing will enjoy it too. Okay, take care. Good luck.